listening to Night Ride FM.
Night Ride FM.
The best in today's retro electro.
What's up, hackers? Welcome to TTI Live. My name is Taggart, and today we have some pretty exciting stuff going on. I am leaving the news section off, and that is because we just have too much to do, and honestly, it wasn't working out. Like, people weren't showing up for the news section, and I am much more interested in making sure that people see the content that they want to see. So I'll find some other outlet for the news section, but for now, we're going to just jump right in at the beginning of these streams. So next week is a pretty cool conference taking place on the interwebs. It was going to be in Santa Clara, California, but then they went remote. And API Secure is, as far as I know, the only conference that is dedicated specifically to API security. And spoiler alert, I'm going to be speaking there. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how you move from a vulnerability management program that is fairly automated and gives sort of bog standard reports to constituents who maintain APIs to doing something a little bit more bespoke, moving slower, but doing better. And that's kind of what we're going to do today. We're going to demonstrate some API testing methodology. Will Corey Ball be there? I don't know if I saw Corey on the list. If you don't know who Corey Ball is, he literally wrote the book on hacking APIs. And I use some of what Corey has in the book in my own methodology, but I also mix it up a little bit as well. But yeah, so that's what I'll be speaking about. It is a paid conference, so you may want to see if your employer is interested in footing some of the bill. I think it's going to be worth it. API security is a kind of rarefied thing, and the more I talk to people about it, the more I discovered that it is sort of this new frontier of web app testing where we're still trying to figure out what the best practices in this area are. We don't have it totally nailed down. So part of what I want to do today is play with some of these methodologies, explain what I use and why I do it, and maybe come up with something new to see if that works a little bit better. Oh, I'm glad the captions are working out. That was something I wanted to make sure got added to the stream, not only for folks who are hearing impaired, but also for folks, and if that's not the right term, I apologize, and also folks who don't speak English natively. Sometimes captions can help out with them as well. Make sure that on the courses on the Taggart Institute, we have captions right now in English and Spanish. Will this be available on YouTube later on? Yes, all of our streams are available in 24 hours on YouTube. And the added benefit, what you get for waiting that long, is you'll get chapter headings as well. So it's broken down into introduction, then the different parts of what we work on throughout the stream. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how our environment's going to get set up today. I have 3 different APIs that I want to attempt to test. We might not get to all 3 today, but I know we'll at least get to the one that I really like, which is VAPI. And by the way, all of these are, if not direct OWASP, Open Web Application Security Projects, if they're not direct OWASP projects, they are recommended by OWASP. So we have that imprimatur. Oh man, closed captioning got imprimatur. I'm impressed. To work with. So we're not doing try hack me, we're not doing hack the box. I'm sticking with that maxim of trying to avoid those as much as possible, using the lab that we have set up and doing a little bit more of a realistic sort of testing environment rather than the more CTF-like environments that you're going to find there. Those are great. They have their place. I am finding personally that they are limited in teaching material, because you end up playing the game rather than exploring concepts directly. And I'm much more interested in exploring concepts directly. All right, so VAPI, what's it all about? Well, it's a vulnerable API. Let me back up, though, for anybody who's completely new to web app testing or to API testing. What are we talking about here? Well, when we have a web application to test, we have a pretty tried and true methodology for doing so. We're going to use tools like an HTTP proxy, an HTTP proxy like Burp Suite or my beloved OWASP Zap in order to intercept the requests and responses to and from the web application and modify them, test them for input and output. We can also use external tools like SQL Map or other specific tools to test for different kinds of injections, fuzzers to discover different endpoints on the application. These are known methods. There are a bunch of books that have been written about this. But the question arises, especially in today's day and age, what happens when the bulk of your web application doesn't have a user interface? What if it doesn't have anything to actually look at in the browser? And to the point of our HTTP proxies, what if it doesn't have a whole lot of HTML for it to parse? What do we do then? How do we work with that? That's where this idea of API testing comes in. Now, application programming interfaces come in many different flavors, and when we talk about APIs in general, it's a pretty broad term. It's an overloaded term. We can talk about APIs where we have one piece of software talking to another, which is essentially what all application programming interfaces are. But when we talk about them in the context of web applications, we really mean two things generally, and increasingly one thing. Two different types of APIs. REST, or representational state transfer APIs, and SOAP, which I always forget what it stands for. Somebody in chat's going to get it before I do, I think. Simple Object Access Protocol. And what is the difference? Essentially, the difference is the API design and the data format. Representational state transfer APIs, or REST APIs, by and large, send and receive data in the form of JSON, or JavaScript Object Notation. SOAP APIs, by specification, send and receive data in XML. There are some other, and also binary data as well. There are some other differences, like how the design works. REST is a design specification about how you use HTTP. That's the other thing, it's over HTTP. In order to send and receive data, or CRUD, create, retrieve, update, and delete data. Okay, so we have, in 2023, we are moving away, a little bit at least, from really heavy PHP, ASP, server-side applications, where all of your data is getting loaded as you load the page. It's really not how we do things anymore. Developers will write a front end, probably in some JavaScript framework, and the data will be loaded from another source, an API, and that API will have a server that it calls back to. At home, it may connect to a database server, it may be distributed, it may be connecting to a caching Redis server, whatever it is, right? The back end is kind of not important for this part of the conversation. What matters is that almost all of the operations that you care about as a tester have nothing to do with the web browser. The JavaScript code that is running in the browser may be calling out, in fact is calling out to that API to get data, but you don't necessarily have the right tools in your proxy to do all of that testing, or really to understand it. That's where we're starting with this. Now, we're going to also start from the perspective of an internal test. Put another way, what some people call a white box test. I don't actually love using that terminology. I've taken, rather than white box, black box testing, I've taken to using open door, closed door testing. So in this case, we're talking about an open door test where we have access to the API specification. And I will tell you that when I do internal API tests for my work, the first thing that I do is I ask the developers of the API for the full specification or another kind of format, so I have all the information about the API ready to go. Right, so I'm not guessing. Now, we'll also talk about adversarial tests, closed door tests, and how we do discovery on those. But we're starting from the perspective of internal, just to get our API legs under us. So I have three APIs that I want to test here. The first one is Vappy. The second one, and I've kind of ordered these in terms of difficulty, Vampy. And finally, Crappy, which is the one that is specifically from OWASP. These are also ordered in terms of complexity. Crappy has the most API endpoints of the three. It's also the most finicky, I've found, in getting it set up. So we're going to leave that one for last, and we're starting on Vappy. in a phenomenal bit of curricular integration that I'm very proud of, the way that you spin all three of these up is with Docker Compose. So if you caught our last 2 streams on Docker, you're well equipped to get this up and running in your environment of choice, as long as you have Docker and Docker Compose installed. So here is the link to the Vappy GitHub repo. And what we'll do is we're going to clone this down. I have already brought this down into my Docker host in the lab, and I have used Docker Compose up-d, as we did during the Docker streams, to bring it up, and now it's running. So if I do Docker container ls, you will see I have quite a few. I've got PHP on my admin, I've got MySQL, and I have a web app as well that is running on port 80. I also have this thing called Iris that has nothing to do with this lab. That's just a thing that I'm using in Docker. That's my IR engine. So don't worry about that. Red Ace. Yes, as always, this is going to be on YouTube in 24 hours with chapter headings. Hey, Collins. Okay. So the API is up and running. And that means for the moment we're done with this part of the lab. So we're going to pivot over to Kali. So this is our attack box. I want to talk about how I've set up my attack box for API testing and some extras that you may be interested in. By the way, let me know if the music is too loud, too quiet, whatever. I'm quite enjoying it, but I want to make sure that I am heard over it. Okay, so first of all, the first thing that you'll pretty much always be told when you start doing API testing is you need to use Postman. You need to use Postman for API testing, which I used to agree with. But I have since started moving off of it because there's an alternative, and I have the maxim of if there is an open source alternative to a tool that I'm using and it fits the bill, I should use it. Hey, Yanner, look in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. That's where the song is. So Postman is a tool to design and test APIs, and it has a really nice interface. It's almost like a browser for APIs. And it's great. I have used Postman as a developer. It's phenomenal. I really like it. But I've been playing around with another tool called Insomnia that also works really well and is in fact open source, whereas Postman is not. They're both free to use. You can use Postman for free, but Insomnia is open source. And so we're going to give that a shot. So if you want to get started with Insomnia, and we'll talk about setup and the whole smash, but you start with insomnia.rest, okay? Is the home page, and you can install it for Windows, Linux, Mac, whatever you want. However, if you are on Linux, if you're using Kali just like me, then I have a recommendation for you, which is to not go through the official installation vector, okay? Because when they tell you to install it, they're going to tell you to install, you know, an additional repository source, and then do sudo apt update, sudo apt install Insomnia, which works. Like, that's fine, but for stuff like this, I actually have taken to using encapsulated applications a lot more, sandboxed applications a lot more. The reason being, I can update them without having to update my entire system, so I always know I have the latest version of that thing without needing to completely update my whole system, possibly breaking stuff. And so for that, I am going to recommend Flatpak. Now, Flatpak is available to you on Kali. You just sudo apt install Flatpak. And then you can set it up the way that Flatpak recommends. And I'm going to give you the Debian instructions. Those are the most correct for Kali, where we have this. Now right now there's some stuff going on with Flatpak and Ubuntu. So learning how to set up Flatpak won't be the worst idea either, because in the next few months, Ubuntu is going to stop deploying Flatpak with Ubuntu flavors because they're favoring Snap, their proprietary technology. So Flatpak, what it does is it creates, think of it as like Docker containers, but for GUI applications. That's really kind of what's going on. They're fully sandboxed environments that you can then access. So, and you can update independently of your system because the sandboxes contain all of the required libraries and SDKs that the application needs to run within its own layers. So you can do sudo flatpak install Insomnia. And FlatHub is actually pretty nice. You can search it either from the command line or from the browser. So if you want to go to FlatHub, you can search for all the different packages that are available. Right? There are quite a few. But of course, if we search for Insomnia, there it be. And you can click install and it'll just like do the thing. But you can also get the instructions here. Now, I will say, after you install Flatpak, restart your system so that the way that it does linking into your desktop applications starts working. And also, I found that you may have to run it in Kali with sudo rather than without it. So, other than that, though, I have Insomnia up and running, and it's running inside of Flatpak, and it's working just fine. So we have Insomnia. That's part one. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take Insomnia's data once we have it loaded, and we're going to pipe it through our best friend, Zap, which is already collecting a bunch of stuff that we're going to ignore here. And the reason for that is I want Insomnia to handle things like credentialing API keys, and even the full spec of the API, but what Insomnia doesn't do very well is fuzzing. Zap is great at fuzzing, and so I'm going to make the initial requests with Insomnia, and then take what I've done and then retest in Zap. I will not use a browser, basically, for this entire test. I will only use Insomnia and Zap. And I'll be able to find some pretty interesting things just through that. What this does mean, though, for you, new web app testers, is that you have to get very comfortable with living in raw HTTP, because you're going to be looking at a lot of HTTP requests and responses. You're not going to be looking at the result in a browser window. And those headers are largely the things that you are testing. So that is really where you can no longer get away with a passing understanding of HTTP headers. You really need to get comfy with them. All right. So first things first, we need to connect Insomnia to Zap. Easy peasy. We're going to go to Application and Preferences, and we're going to go down in general to the HTTP network proxy, enable it, set up localhost 8080. I do not know why it is considered a password. But set it up for HTTP and HTTPS. Everything looks good. Okay. While we're here in the settings, there are a couple of plugins that I really like installing. So the first one is this Insomnia plugin multiple requests. What this lets you do is click on a folder, which we'll see soon, and execute all of the requests in the folder at once, which is great for loading stuff into Zap. And then, of course, we have the Dracula theme, because, of course, we do. And that's it for now. When you first open Insomnia, and this took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out, when you start in Insomnia, you are starting in this workspace or a new document here, and this is not actually where you want to be to load in an API spec. This is you're one level too low. And it took me, again, too long for me to figure this out. If you look at the top here, there's this kind of breadcrumb trail. It's hard to see. It's easy to miss. But in fact, I want to go back up to the top level here to Insomnia. And now you can kind of see we've got these different projects, right? Or different workspaces. So we can create projects and we can create different workspaces here, however we want to do it. So I'm going to delete this, right? And I'm going to create a new collection, but I'm going to import it from a file. How does that work? This is where we finally start to get our connection to our API spec. If we go look at VAPI in GitHub, it has a Postman folder. What's inside it? There is a Postman collection.json file, and this is what we actually want. We want the Postman collection.json file. And Postman has this cool capability where it exports the entire set of requests and sample data that you've used with Postman into a single JSON file. Luckily, and by the way, if it didn't do this, it would have been a deal breaker. Luckily, Insomnia can import these Postman collection files and create them too. So I'm going to just go raw here and import this thing. We can either import, I think, from a URL or from a file, right? Import from URL. Yeah. So I can just load it straight from that raw URL link. Do we want to import as a request collection or a design document? I want to import this as a request collection. I imported 1 workspace, 16 folders, 26 requests. Cool. And I'm going to rename it to VAPI rather than my collection. And inside of VAPI, there is luckily a VAPI folder, real handy. And we have it broken down just as it is in the application by the different APIs. These are essentially different challenges in VAPI. API 1 has a specific challenge, API 2 has a specific challenge, and so on. And if we look at one of these, let's just look at get user. So the first thing is we have this HTTP and then host, which is an unset variable, and then the API ID, which is also an unset variable. We'll talk about how to fix that in just a second. But you can see underneath of it, there's a body, and then if we go to auth, we can set up an auth type if we want to, right? API, basic auth, OAuth 1, 2. And if we set up basic auth, then we have headers that we can set. If we want to set up query parameters, we can do that here rather than putting them raw in the URL. These are get parameters. And then the body, of course, we can set up to either be JSON, XML, YAML if we're insane, even GraphQL for those of you who are doing GraphQL stuff. And of course, we can do form URL encoded as well. But GET requests, of course, do not have bodies, but we can switch that up to a different method if we're interested in doing so. And then, very importantly, you can add custom headers, which is going to be real important in just a second. And if there's any documentation that comes along with it, it will show up here. All right. Just to give you an idea of what you get back, let me go up one level. And I'm going to create a new request collection and call it Passphrasify. And I'm going to use my own API here. Passphrase.taggart.com. Right. So let me copy this into Insomnia with a new request. So a new HTTP request, which I will call passphrases. And Then my query param, my n is going to be 10, right? And the separation is going to be an underscore. And the digit min is going to be 0. And the digit max, digit man is wrong, digit min. And digit max is going to be 99. Perfect. So by setting it up that way, you see that it's filling this in just this way. Let's send it. Let's see what happens when we send it. Ha! I forgot a step. Anyone want to take a guess as to why I got an SSL error? Yes, Sar, I am. This is getting piped through Zap. Therefore, I either disable SSL validation or... yeah, I think I just disable SSL validation. Validate certificates during authentication. We're going to uncheck this. And we'll try it one more time. Oh, come on. Silpers. I thought I just did that. So it didn't even go... actually, it's interesting. How do we set this up? Let's see. Can you import Zap Cert into Insomnia? So I actually don't think you need to, but let's check. Yes. Client certificates. Yes, we can import it. There it is. And in fact, we're gonna at the top. Can I do it at the top level? No. Okay. Okay, so here, let's make sure that we have it exported. Yeah, we do. Let's try that one more time. So we're going to go to collection settings, client certificates, choose PEM. Okay. And there we go. Okay. So a fairly important step. And if we go to our history, you can see that we are getting passphrase.taggertech into our proxy now. And once that's done, I am able to do things like fuzz this. We'll do a numbers fuzzer just real quick here. From 1 to 100. Now, you might notice something happened, which is a 503. I have a time limiter on this API so that you can't fuzz it, which is a thing that you want to see. So we've now determined that there's a lockout on this API. Pretty cool, right? But now you can see that we're not using the browser, right? We're just loading in the API spec into Insomnia, and then we're testing it in Zap. So this is the basic methodology that I think folks are starting to arrive at. Okay, the Vivaldi stuff is starting to drive me crazy, so we're also going to exclude some things in our global exclude URL. Yeah. We're going to add great. All right, so basic Insomnia workflow figured out. Fantastic. Let's now use Vappy and actually get to work here. So we're going to go back up to the top level, go into Vappy, and since now we know that that's an issue, we're going to set up our client certificates. Awesome. Okay. And now we know that we have this host variable and it's set, but how do we actually define it in our environment? You can either set it here, or this is really the way to do it. So the way that Insomnia works is it has this environment object that is top level. You can also define environment objects for folders, but it says we have no environment here. If we right click on the Vappy folder, you can see that there's this environment option, and that's exactly what we want to do. Now we could set up the top level environment, and that would be fine too. But I find it easier to just go here. If we click on environment, we get this environment overrides. And here we're going to just define our API host. So in this case, and it's just JSON. So host, and then it's 192.168. Nope. I put it out on the 10 dot, didn't I? 10.1.99.114. Okay. Once that's done, notice that now host is populated and it looks good. Now, comparing that to Postman, what's the difference? In Postman, you have variables that you can set up in different locations, but honestly, I actually prefer Insomnia's way of doing this. Now, that's totally me being, a graybeard, where just give me a JSON file to mutate, and that's fine. It's a little bit more structured in Postman, and if you prefer that, that is something to consider. But I actually love that I can just drop it in a JSON file and have overrides per folder and just do that same thing. Have different JSON objects to set up my values. Now, this API 1 ID isn't set, but we don't have anything to set it to just yet. The first thing that we're going to have to do with API 1 is create user. But also, if we go to slash Vappy here? Yeah, so if we go to slash Vappy, if you have it set up, this is the kind of walkthrough. It's not the walkthrough, it's like the challenge listing for the API. And there's another thing that it has, very important, which is the Open API specification. If you didn't have the Postman collection, the Open API spec is the other way that you can load that data into Insomnia. Actually, you can even, with the Open API spec, download it directly into Zap. If you have the Open API spec, you can load it directly into Zap. Here's why I don't do that. I'll show you how you do that, but here's why I almost never do. It's because of authentication management. If your API uses OAuth authentication in any way, then you want to use something like Insomnia or Postman to manage that flow. It is so much easier than doing that in Zap. All right, but let me actually show you how that works. So if we want to import an Open API spec that used to be called Swagger into Zap directly, here's how it goes. Import Open API definition from local file system in this case. Okay, we'll go to, it was in downloads, there's the swagger.json, and the target URL is HTTP 10.1.99.114. If we import it, now, boom, we actually have, and it just tested the entire API for us straight away. See that? It actually went and attempted to do it. So if you want to, you can, in fact, set this up. The problem, of course, is that a lot of this stuff is parameterized, right? And we don't have those parameters, so you kind of break that in that way. So that's one reason why I don't like loading this directly into Zap. I like to handle it through something like Insomnia or Postman first. Now, let's go to our first API definition, API 1, broken object level authorization. I'll zoom this in a little bit so it's easier to see. You can register yourself as a user. That's it. Or is there something else? Okay. Let's find out. Broken object level authorization is another way of saying IDOR. What's IDOR, chat? I know Ginge knows. A finding. In secure direct object reference. Very good, Jessica. That's right. We can see stuff we shouldn't be able to see. Now, before I start testing this API properly, I'm going to do some stuff in Zap that doesn't come out of the box, but you can add easily. Hey, C-Core Bytes, thank you so much for that follow. One of the add-ons that I have installed is the Community Scripts plugin. And with that comes a super nice set of detection rules. So if I go and open my scripts window, and I go to my passive rules, there is a hunt.py rule here. And I am going to enable this. Here's why. This is specifically designed for bug bounty hunting. I actually think it comes from HackerOne. Or BugCrowd. I can't remember which one. But it will create informational alerts in Zap for me about things that may have vulnerabilities. So it's a nice first pass to say, hey, you should take a second look at this because this may be vulnerable to XYZ. And the rules are pretty, first of all, they're clear here. You can just read them. But they're also very comprehensive, including for IDOR. So we're going to enable this script as our stuff starts running, just to see what happens. Okay. Turn all this off. Okay. Good, 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 good. And now, let's run some stuff. So the first thing we'll do is we'll create a user. That requires nothing, right? We can just create a user here. This font is a little small. Let me see if I can make it a bit bigger. Yeah. Hopefully that's a touch more readable for everybody. So our username is going to be Bob. The name is going to be Bobson. I don't know why I'm like this, but I'm sure I'm not the only one. And our course that we're going to sign up for is... Yeah, no, always be branding. Python for Defenders, Part 2. Ahem. Just guys, this stream is a perfect continuation of your course. Thank you. Yeah. If I were to add to PWST, this is what I would add to it. Okay. Password. Password 1, 2, 3. Send it. I heard Python 4. I got excited. What did we get back? So first of all, we got a 201 created. Look at this nice little drop down explaining what the request is. Very, very handy. So this was our response. We got a username, we got a course, and we got an ID. Oh, interesting. Okay. I love it when a plan comes together. So, first of all, let's include this thing in a new context. And we're going to exclude this from the proxy, this Google APIs thing. Okay, so 10.1.99.114. We have now seen a post, and we now have this properly structured request inside of Zap if we want to mess with it. So that's pretty handy. But in addition, look what the hunt.py script found for us. Possible IDOR, possible SQLI, and possible SSTI. That's optimistic, given that there is no template here, but possible IDOR, what did it alert on? Hunt located the user parameter inside your application traffic. The user parameter is most often susceptible to insecure direct object reference. Okay, so it's bumping on the user. It's actually bumping on the wrong thing. But let's see what happens when we run the next request, which is get user. Now, in this case, see how API 1 ID is still undefined? We need to go back to our environment. And we can actually set this up in just API 1 because it's specific to API 1. API 1 ID. And our user number was what, 6? Yeah, it was 6. Okay, now, again, do we need any authentication? We don't at the moment. We just need a user ID. Oh, we do need an API 1 auth. We'll try to fire it off without it first, because we always want to test if authorization is broken. So, send it. Oh, we'll disable the... There we go. Send it. Okay, so that's actually really good news. We get a finding of auth header not set. Okay. So we'll re-enable this. And then how do we log in? API 2 has the user login. So we actually have to jump over to API 2 and take our user from create user, right? The username was Bob. So we're going to log in. We're going to go to our JSON body. So the email was bob@bob.com and the password is password123. So we're going to fire that off. And send it. Oh, come on. Oh, no, 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 no. It's because the username is wrong. It's saying email, but they actually mean username. I think. No. That's so interesting. I have not fully tested this API, so I'm playing with it here along with you. Let's create a new user. That's ID 7. Yeah, it really should be. Is user not email? Apparently it's not. Yeah, no, something else is going on here. So we create the user. Well, one thing I can check for is if I can set the email. Oh, wild. Duplicate entry bob@bob.com for key API1 user's username. Oh, because it already has that username. Right. Okay, so that worked. It didn't bump on the email, but I'm wondering if that means... No. So user login has an email field. Whereas here, we just have a create user. Get user, API ID. We don't have an auth token. Here's another create user. Hold up. Okay, so API 1. All right, we need an auth token here, but we can't seem to log in just yet. Which is cool. Oh, interesting. So if we look through all of these, there may be another way to do this. I'm wondering if either it's an undocumented API endpoint. That's weird, though, because, I mean, they gave us the spec, so it shouldn't be undocumented. There's an... Okay, so jumping all over the place, there is one thing in here I see that I think we might want to start with, weirdly, which is... API 4, which is the mobile login. Just the mobile number. Oh, no, because we don't know what the mobile number is here. Let's see if we can just set the header to something nonsensical, as long as it's there, right? So we'll set up API 1 auth nonsense token. We'll do it as base 64. Okay, so we got a 500 by sending it a garbage token. No cookies set. Okay, so we're going to unset that auth header because that's obviously not doing us any good. Let me just set it to an empty string. Yeah, auth header not set. I didn't expect this one to be such a head scratcher right off the bat. And what's crazy is, like, I had this working. And now I can't remember how I had it working. Okay, let's move on to API 2. Just to... Oh, wait. Hold on a second. Just as authentication. No auth, security team, security team, scheme type, HTTP, HTTP authorization scheme, no auth. No, because that's for create user. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's try to log in, even though it doesn't appear to be a thing. Let's try. Let's take a post request here. Open resend. Okay. The field is username. Core bytes. I'm aware. Keep in mind that the way that the spec came in, it was email for API 2's login. Okay? Not username. There is no login in API 1. And we only added email here. And we tried changing it to username. We'll try it this way. I don't think the spec is lying to us. Yeah, the spec is not lying to us. We're missing something. Now here, I'm gonna change this to API 1. Okay, there is no such thing as a login there. 500, yeah. That's not an API endpoint. So for the moment, let's move to API 2 and see what's going on. We don't seem to have credentials for this. How do we log in? There's something in the resources folder given to you. Oh, hold on. Is this one of those situations where I didn't do the prior reading and now I'm in trouble? API 2. Creds.csv. Ah. Lovely. Okay. Let's go get that. So this is fun. Now we're going to be doing some brute forcing here. So creds.csv. So we can do this a couple of different ways. The way that I like to do it is to split this up. So I will cut d comma f1 creds.csv and send that to users.txt. And then change it to field 2 and make that passwords.txt. Okay. Now let's see, API 2, what you got for us? User login. Okay, we actually already did this, but we'll do it one more time. Okay, now there's API 2. We're going to take the email. We're going to fuzz this whole thing, basically. I'm going to fuzz this. And we're going to do payloads, add, file, select documents, API, users. There's an added space at the beginning there for some reason. Let me fix that. That's going to bother me. Dim users.txt. No, there isn't. Okay. And then for the second one, we're going to highlight the password here. And we'll add a location. And we'll add a payload of passwords. Okay. And threads is good. Good, good, good. Okay. Start the fuzzer. And we're going to sort by response code. Oh, wait, you know what? I'm wondering if we did this a little bit incorrectly. Basically, it should be username password, which means we have another way to do this. So we need to produce JSON bodies with email and password the way that it's done. So let's actually rm users and passwords. And okay. I can do this all in Vim. It'll be a little bit crazy. It's going to go a little bit like this. We're first going to replace the beginning of a line with a curly brace. And then we're going to replace the end of a line with a close brace and comma. And then we're going to replace every comma with a comma and a line break. Actually, my bad. A line break and a tab. Then we're going to replace every curly brace with a curly brace, a line break, and a tab. And then we're going to replace every end curly with a line break and a curly. Okay. Now, there's one more thing we need to do. We just wrap all this stuff in quotes. And username, right? So we're going to replace... We're going to capture anything that has the @ sign in it. With the following: email, does that work? Oh, I forgot to backslash the parentheses. That kind of worked. What did I do wrong? Email. Oh, comma. It's still picking up that tab for some reason. Actually, I can just remove tabs. I don't need those. Okay. And now I can replace anything that begins a line with words with password actually Can't just do words. I have to do everything.
Now, most people have days when they come to work with worries, hangovers, or distractions. When the body's on the job, but the mind is elsewhere.
Everything but quotes and curly braces. Is there somewhere one could go to learn what you're doing right now? Why, yes, there is. At the... Do I have the IRE? I don't have it. But at the taggartinstitute.org, we have an Intro to Regular Expressions course that will do exactly that. There we go. We have JSONified our CSV. Now, that wasn't the only way to do this. I should... Oh, well, let's also clear all the empty lines. Right? And now I have to clean it up a little bit for Vim. Or sorry, not for Vim, for Zap. Because if I'm going to process these passwords... something went wrong here. Alright, so this is like annoying. This is an annoying way to do it. Let me show you another way to do it. Which is going to be much cleaner. Okay, this is going to be with Python. You'll love this. Import CSV, import JSON. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to do with open creds.csv as F. Creds equals is it, hold on, is it email or password? It's email, so we've got to be careful with that. What we're about to do is called a dictionary comprehension. Email, password, or, and this is going to get nuts. Let's break this down, actually. So, creds.csv as F. F equals CSV dot, or sorry, reader equals CSV dot reader. F creds equals F dot, or reader dot. Row for row in reader is going to give us the raw username password list, right? So if I then split that then what I get is Oh, if I... Right. So if I do something like this... Username. Nope, it's email. Row index 0. Password. Row index 1. Let's see what that gives us. Aha! Now I have Python dictionary objects. And then so json.dump is going to allow us to dump an object directly into that file. Which I believe is going to be creds and then F. Okay, now if we take a look at creds.json, hey, look. Now, unfortunately, it's an array, which doesn't do us a whole lot of good for Zap. Because Zap needs... There is a hidden byte in here. I wasn't crazy. Zap needs lines, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take each of these and turn it into a unique line. I'm going to remove the bracket at the beginning and the bracket at the end. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace any curly brace with a comma with a curly brace, a comma, and a line break. And I have to do that multiple times per line. There we go. Excellent. There's some extra spaces in here for reasons I don't understand, so we're going to remove those. Okay. And then last but not least, we are going to replace the end comma with nothing. Now, Vim is yelling at us because this is very bad JSON. But it is going to work great for our fuzzer. We're going to save this, in fact, as creds, or call it fuzz.txt, I guess. Okay. Now, here's how we're going to do this. We're going to highlight this whole thing and fuzz it. Rather than mess with email password inside of Zap, forget that noise. We will simply add this file here, fuzz.txt, which is going to be structured perfectly for our purposes once it's loaded into the fuzzer. How many of these are there? 1,000. Okay. And it looks like our requests make sense. Now, we haven't seen a success yet, but we're only a quarter of the way through. Now, we should be getting timed out, by the way. The API shouldn't let us continue to attack it like this. Just like you saw with my API, at some point it should say, enough is enough. Oh, hey, we got a 200. And we got a token. Cool. Okay, so we got a token for user login. Which we will take that value of. Oh, we have several, actually. Multiple successes. Very cool. Okay. Two people have the same password. Interesting. And Savannah Ortiz. Okay. So, let's take one of these tokens here. Go back over to Insomnia, and let's get our user details. And we'll get API 2 auth going. Hey, chat. I realize now I'm doing a lot of JSON. And I'm comfortable with it because I've been working with JSON forever. But is there anybody on stream or in chat who needs a refresher on the basics of JavaScript object notation? If so, give it a shout out and we'll go do that. Oh, snap. So it actually gives us all of the users, including their tokens. And there's our flag, by the way, for flag 2. So, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a couple of alerts here. The first alert we're going to set up is on the login for API 2. And I'm going to do abusive functionality and call it high. Okay, and confidence confirmed. And the issue here is that the endpoint allows brute forcing. And solution is going to be something like enforce timeout lockouts for IP addresses and accounts, frankly. Now, the reason I'm doing that, the reason I'm making sure to have these alerts is because I'm going to be using that to generate my final report from here. Your VM seems to be in overdrive. Oh, you're referring to my RAM usage here? Yeah, that's because Zap is passively scanning a few requests here. That happens. And specifically, I've been noticing with Zap 2.12 that it will start passively scanning 4 things. Exactly 4 things. I don't know why. No matter what site I'm doing, 4 things. It's the weirdest situation. And I would presume that's because of the 4 cores. It's the reason it's passively scanning so much stuff is because I just gave it all of this. It's passively scanning all the junk that I just fuzzed. So it has to process those, and then it'll calm down. I think you can bypass that. Let me see. Let me select a thing to fuzz here and see if there's an option for that. Options. No. So anything that you fuzz is going to get passive scanned. Hence our overdrive. Okay. So we got our flag 2. I'm still a little mystified as to what's going on with... the first one. I am proper confused. No, I don't mind that it's passive scanning, just a guy. What I mind is that it gets stuck like this, because there's certain things that just processes forever. Right, and you can turn some of these off for that reason. There are certain things that you absolutely don't need to have passive scanning set for. Right now we're scanning for everything, but you can turn certain things off. So for example, oh yeah, you should turn off timestamp disclosure. That should be off. That's not a thing. That shouldn't matter at all. There are a few others. Okay. Let's move on to API 3. We'll come back to API 1 if we can. Excessive data exposure, we have all been there. Giving away too much data and dev showing it. Try the Android app in the resource folder. Android app? No. API 5 it is, or API 4 it is. Lack of resources and rate limiting. Same problem, actually. We believe OTPs are a great way of authenticating users and secure, too, if implemented correctly. Yeah. Okay. OTPs, one-time passwords. So let's go over to API 4, since I'm not doing the Android app right now. Mobile login. This is set up with a phone number preloaded for us. Let's fire this off. Okay. It says 4-digit OTP sent on mobile number. And then the next is verify OTP with an OTP of 9999. Phenomenal. Okay, so I'm going to send this. Obviously, it's going to be incorrect. So what's the problem right here? What's our problem with this verify mechanism? Hey, M and Silk, thank you so much for the follow. Nobody? Too small. I'm about to brute force this one-time password. Now, there's a little bit of a trick to this. Because it's 4 digits, we have 10,000 possibilities. And even though Zap has a fuzzer, switch this to text. Even though Zap has a fuzzer for numbers, it's a little bit annoying because it only knows how to do, like if I do from 0 to, or even if I try 0, 0, I can't do like multiple zeros. You want to use burp? I absolutely do not want to use burp. No, no, no. I just need to be a little bit creative about how to generate my payload. For that, we go back to Python. So over here, let's think about our numbers capabilities. And again, I'm going to use list comprehensions because they're fast. So, right, if I do just like n for n in range 100, what do I get? I get a list of numbers. Okay. Now, if I convert that to a string, now I get a list of strings that are digits. Now, here comes the best part. What if I were able to add prepend zeros, as many as I need? So, don't forget that in Python, you can do repeated strings with string multiplication. So, if I do 0 times 4, I get 4 zeros. What that means is I can do something like this. 0 times 4 minus the length of stir n. We'll parenthesize that. Plus the string concatenation event. What I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, I know that it's 4 digits long, but the number is going to take up some space. So 4 minus however many digits that thing is, that's how many zeros I'm going to add to the beginning of it. There we go. And so we'll just kick that up to 10,000 and save that as a variable. They're all there, I promise. And then with open ends.txt in write mode as f.writelines n plus new line for n in ends. And then if I cat ends.txt, hey, look, there's my payload. So I should probably write a quick script to do that, but it's something that I've done enough times that I'm pretty comfortable with it. So again, the way, if you need to prepend your digits with zeros this way, if you need to zero pad, a way to do it from first principles, I think there is a library that does this, but to do it from first principles, you can just take 0, multiply it times the length of the total size of your digits, minus the length of the thing that you're about to prepend zeros to, and then concatenate that with the actual number, and you're good. Now, this is done in a list comprehension, which is easy to write for me, but maybe hard to understand generally. So if you wanted to do this in a for loop, here's how you would do it. For I in range 10,000, n equals or let's say zeros equals no. N equals stir I. And then we would say zeros. I'm being very explicit here. It's 0 times the length of n so 4 minus that, whatever that is, and whatever your digit happens to be. And then we'll print this is one way to do it with a format string. Same process, but that's a for loop. And you could append it to a list if you wanted to. Okay, so we have this thing finally. Let's add a payload to it. Off you go. And again, we're sorting by code. I'm not entirely certain why we're getting a nan here for progress. It should know how many there are. All right, we'll let that go. This API 1 is driving me crazy. We create the user, but we can't log in with it without the API 1 auth token, which we don't have. And there doesn't appear to be a login for that part of the API. Yeah. Just not sure. So we create the user. It gives us an ID. Hey, Brian. Good to see you. Hope you've been well. I'm not sure if you've been getting slammed by rain or snow. Oh, thanks for the resub, too. Oh, wait a minute. Dang, gift subs too. I think I figured it out, friends. I think I figured out API 1. Here's the deal. it has an auth token, but that's not actually what's happening. Because it says auth header not set. What if it's basic auth? With the username of Bob and password 123. Nerds. I really thought we had it there. Okay, other stuff to think about here. If we're thinking about API testing. Can we give it an ID? Is another thing to think about. And have it overwrite. This may not work, but it might work. Let's say we'll overwrite 6, just because that's one that we control. No, because it gives us back 10. It's PHP. Maybe it's vulnerable to SQL injection. Worth a shot. So we'll take this create user. And we will save the raw. Request all. And we'll save it in documents. FAPI. API1 user. And we'll use SQL map here. SQL map R API1 user. It's a no starch. Yeah, so what they're referring to is this right here. I do want to call out though. I mean, Corey's great and the book is good. Don't buy it from Amazon. Buy it from No Starch. People were hacking APIs before Corey wrote the book. I just want to point that out. Yes, I want to process the JSON. It would be bananas if this worked. Meanwhile, how's our fuzzer doing? Stop the presses. I'm not doing all 10,000. Okay, we got ourselves a one-time password verification code of 1872. That's great. So back in API 4, verify OTP, we will rerun this with 1872. And now we have a login token, which we will then take over to Insomnia and get details. So again, here, we have to set up API 4 key. So we're going to, in the API 4 folder, set up the environment and set up API 4 key and set it to this value. Go. There's our flag. One of these days, I'd like to build an API from scratch, not install a bunch of dependency trash and framework. Yeah, so it sucks. I've done it. It's not fun. You're learning Go. That helps. Although, I don't know how you find the HTTP stuff in Go. I'm not a big fan. Honestly, Flask would be a way to go with it, with with Fast API. Or, no, don't do, like, unless you really have a reason to. I have to say, like, I love Rust. Y'all know I love Rust. Unless you have a very specific reason to build an API in Rust, don't do it. Like, unless your whole team, unless your whole stack is doing Rust. Let me put it this way. When you're working with a data-driven API, you have other ways of doing type safety, okay? And that would be through your ORM, your Object Relations Manager, whatever that ends up being, whether it's SQLize or whatever, or Prisma. Your data has types, which you can define in Rust, but again, learning Rust just to build an API is, to me, overkill. There are other great reasons to learn Rust, but I personally have found every time I've tried to work with Rust for, like, web stuff, unless you're in a full Rust stack already, I don't really see the cost benefit there. Corey also has an API testing course on API Sec. Yes, he does. Okay, no SQL map here. We got flag 4, though. I don't know why we're bouncing so hard on API 1. Something simple that we're missing here. We register the user. It's created. There is no login. And we tried logging in with the email, and it didn't work, right? Oh no, I set this up the wrong request. That should have been on... Oh no, it was. It's just the wrong value. I'm looking forward to that too. I'm glad you missed the rain, Brian. San Diego was losing its mind. So were we. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to API 5. What's your whole deal, API 5? Hold on, I have to get the year right. This is going to be a very niche joke. It's taking longer than I wanted to. The year is 2259. The name of the place is API 5. If you get that, we can hang. Broken functional authorization. You can register yourself as a user. That's it? Or is there something more? I heard admin logins often, but uses different route. Someday, I am just going to go through every one of these repos and correct everybody's grammar. That'll be my final gift to InfoSec. before I become being a pure energy. If you're keeping score, that's a Babylon 5 and a Stargate reference within the space of 60 seconds. We're doing well today. All right, API 5. Let's create user. Okay, same deal. So username is going to be Bob. Password 123. Name Bob Bobson. 123 Street Road. All right. Do it. Okay. We get an ID of 3. This seems very much like what we got from API 1. Did we get anything else back? No cookies, nothing. Okay. So API 5, yeah, no, okay. Hey, Lou Pixel, thanks for that follow. Okay, so same situation. We need... I heard admins log in often but use a different route. Okay, I'm beginning to suspect that the API spec that we have here is incomplete. Which, if true, we'll have to do some fuzzing for, which I suppose this was more adversarial than I thought it was going to be. So, if it doesn't have... It says, I hear admin login often. Do they mean I hear admins log in often but use a different route? Okay, so if that's true, then what are we thinking? We're thinking API 5. Okay, what I want to do at this point then is be a little bit more creative about our fuzzing. To do that, we're going to loop in another tool, which is my buddy Ferox Buster. So Ferox Buster, we're going to use to fuzz potential API endpoints. We're going to join Ferox Buster with a... Yeah, API 5 user admin. That's like the easy mode. We'll try that first. But if it doesn't work, we're going to go to Ferox Buster. Right? Admin. Internal server error, which means it's not really that. Yeah, there's something else there. So let's exit out of Python real quick. And cd documents. Okay, I do have sec lists. Great. Sec lists. If we go to discovery in sec lists, and web content, there are several API lists here. We look at actions lowercase. Quite a few here. So that's a nice list to start with. There's also API endpoints, which is a little bit more specific. There's also objects, which I like. Objects is very long. So I tend to start with actions lowercase, and then we'll move to API, and then we'll go to objects. So how we're going to do this, we're going to do Ferox Buster, we're going to do burp relay, but we're also going to do a specific thing here. We'll break all of this down. Okay, so it's web content, API, actions, lowercase.txt, and our URL is API 5. Now, Ferox Buster has the ability to do multiple HTTP methods. It doesn't just do gets anymore. You can do posts and stuff with it. But I am going to do a quick hit, and I'm going to add a status code to track on here. What status code would I use if I were looking to see if the endpoint were available, but not necessarily on a GET request? Like it was waiting for a post, but it didn't get it. What HTTP response code would I be watching for? Come on, web testers. Show me your HTTP expertise. USL has it. 405, method not allowed. And so, let's break this down. Ferox Buster is going to not recurse. We're limiting to 10 concurrent scans and across 10 threads, which, by the way, is 20, I think. It's not... Oh, no, it's 100. I'm sorry. It's multiplicative. And then we're going to hit API 5 with this list, which is going to be added at the end here. Burp replay means that anything that it finds matching one of these status codes is going to be added. 200. We'll add 403 on here as well. Anything that is added is going to be sent to our proxy on, by default, 8080. So burp replay is like a nice shorthand for that. Off we go. Not much. And I'm actually going to add the queue to this as well. For quiet, because we don't need to see all of this. Okay. Then we go to objects to fuzz this. I'm still stuck on the API 1 thing. I can't believe we're getting flummoxed by this. Okay. Did we test if it was just nonsense? If it worked? Uh-oh. It's a little busy, I think. Ferox Buster is Ferox Bustering.
Let the game begin!
Is it down? Can I do the mobile login? Yeah, no, it's up. Okay. So that's interesting, right? So if I send a user with a garbage header, and we get a 500. Oh, wait. I just had an idea on API 1. Okay. HTTP basic authorization or authentication, which is what we tried before. The way that this works is what you end up sending. Let's try it right now. Username Bob, password 123. What you end up sending. Okay. Let's take a look at it in the proxy. Time traveler routine, play me a song. Oh, okay. I will do so in just a second. I'm bothered that we're not seeing further history happen here. So this is one of those. I should have saved it. Okay, well, whatever. We're gonna bring Zap back up so it stops screaming at us. And then I will play you a song. Then we'll talk about HTTP auth. Oh, right. Okay, but we still sent it. Fine. So hang on to that for a moment. Okay. Song time. Okay, hopefully this is sounding good. Actually, I have a new one for you today. This one really doesn't need any introduction. Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on.
control to Major Tom. Commencing countdown, engines on. Check ignition and may God's love be with you. This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade. And the papers want to know whose shirts you wear. Now it's time to leave the capsule if you dare. This is Major Tom to ground control. I'm stepping through the door. And I'm floating in a most peculiar way. And the stars look very different today. For here am I floating in a tin can, far above the world. Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do. Though I've passed 100,000 miles, I'm feeling very still. And I think my spaceship knows which way to go. Tell my wife I love her very much, she knows. Ground control to Major Tom, your circuit's dead, there's something wrong. Can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear me, Major Tom? Here am I floating in my tin can, far above the moon. Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do.
Okay, and we're back. Okay. Right. So, here was my brainwave about API 1. Hey, John, thanks so much for that follow. Okay, so HTTP basic authorization. When you use HTTP basic authorization, you give it a username and a password. But what gets sent is this. This authorization header that says basic and then this base 64 thing. What is this base 64 thing? It's very silly. It is this. It's your username and password separated by a colon. That's all it is. That's HTTP basic auth. So here's the thing. What if they're using that, but they're using it with a custom key rather than built-in auth? right? What if, rather than using basic auth, they're setting it up with this authorization token? So let's go to environment and set up the API1 auth here, like so. See what happens. There it is. Okay. Now we can go to work. Now that we have successfully authenticated to API1, finally, we can check out IDOR. So we have this user 6, right? And here we're going to just buzz this number. And in Zap, we have the numbers payload, which actually makes a lot of sense in this case. So we'll do from 0 to, you can do to 100 or 0 to 10, whatever you want. And go. Okay. Interesting. I don't think I did numbers. Or I did, but somehow I was fuzzing the username too? Why did this get started? Weird. I have no idea what just happened there. But here's the important point. First of all, we got the flag, but we were able to demonstrate insecure direct object reference. So we'll take this, and in our history, we will generate a new alert for this. Now we can do insufficient authorization is, I think, the appropriate way to go here. That is high, and confidence is confirmed. We'll call it IDOR on user ID. Cool. So we've done API 4, API 5. API 6, what's your whole deal? Mass assignment. Ooh, interesting. Welcome to our store. We will give you credits if you behave nicely. Our credit management is super secure. That seems trustworthy. So we can create a user, and then we get a user. Oh, no, wait. We didn't figure out API 5, right? We didn't figure out admin logins. We didn't figure out API 5 yet. Why not software category is more relevant for the alert? I'm not sure what category you're referring to. However, insufficient authorization is the appropriate category for this, because here's the issue. The issue is that while I am authorized, I should be authorized to get information about myself. I should not be allowed to get information about other users. Over the Twitch category. Yeah, am I developing software right now? Am I developing a game? I am not. I am discussing technology, which is why we are in the science and technology category. Along with, I might add, almost all of the other information security streamers, which you can find on the hack list. Right, so we still have to test out API 5 here. Let's get back to that. So that's interesting. Now, I wonder if we have the same situation here. So we'll try ID4. The same stuff we learned. So now that we know that maybe they use the same basic auth token here, we will try that. So we're going to modify the environment to have API 5 ID. And that would be number 4. And we'll set up the API 5 auth now that we know how to do it. We'll set that up right here. Okay. Let's get our user. So that was successful. We were able to get back our user for API 5. So that auth mechanism works. Let's once again check API 5 for IDOR. I'm not sure that we'll have the same success rate here, but we'll test it. So again, we'll fuzz with numbers. I don't know why the injections happened before. That was weird. From 0 to, let's do 10. They're plainly sequential. Which, by the way, isn't itself a finding. If you have sequential IDs, they can be guessed like this, right? So sequential IDs are a bad idea. You should be using UUIDs or something like that. All right, we got a couple. They're all us. They're all us. So this is properly secured. So the question then becomes, what other API endpoints are there? We did fuzzing. What do we have here? BF5 is create user, get user. All right. You know what? With this authorization though, let me send this okay, we sent this. Let's do in-zap fuzzing. So we're gonna open and resend with the request editor. And just send API user. Actually. Users? Oh. So there was an undocumented endpoint. There's flag 5. Okay, if I hadn't gotten lucky with that, how would we have done that? So I would have done something like taken that right here and gone to fuzz, and then gone to payloads, and then sec lists. Scripts. Sec lists, discovery, web content, API, actions lowercase. Oh yeah, it's not in there. Let's actually go to objects. Loved Sliver vid on YouTube. Planning to show more of it again someday. If you look carefully at the YouTube channel, we use Sliver all the time. So yes. Yeah, Sliver has 100% replaced Metasploit for me. And it's funny, I still need to take the CRTO exam. And now it's like messing me up because I'm so used to working with Sliver now that Cobalt Strike doesn't feel natural. And I have to say, I don't mean to call Rasta out. The course is fantastic. But there was a problem. So I bought the course right as it was about to get updated. And I got my courseware updated. But my labs never got updated. And also, that was complicated by the fact that Snap Labs got purchased by Immersive Labs. And so the whole labs situation was like not ideal. I still had access to them, but it was to the older version. And so it didn't map onto the instructional material exactly, which is a little problematic. It wasn't great. Okay, so we don't have to continue fuzzing this, but you get the idea. We could fuzz using the API actions within Zap itself. We don't have to do that directly through Ferox Buster. This can be a little safer because it's less likely to break your API. Ferox Buster is so aggressive, it's so fast that it can do that. And you have the data right inside here once it comes in. So that can be handy. And I prefer to, and this is specifically for endpoint fuzzing, right? We're at P at this point. All right, we'll stop that. Okay, so we've knocked over API 5. API 6. We will give you credits if you behave nicely. Our credit management is super secure. Okay, so let's go to API 6, and let's go ahead and create our user. Our name is Bob. And our password is password123. Off we go. ID 3, very good. And how does our get user work? API 6 auth, same situation. I assume it's basically exactly as we've done before. So we'll set up the API 6 auth token by setting up our environment in Insomnia. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so this one is interesting. We have a GET request, and it allows us to say get user me. Now, the way that representational state transfer, aka REST APIs, should be designed is that this endpoint should also be the endpoint to update the same record, but with a different HTTP verb or HTTP method. So in that case, what we would do is we would change from a get to a put for update. Now, we can do this either in Insomnia or we can do it in Zap. In this case, I'm going to do it in Zap. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to do it in Insomnia. Just kidding. We're going to do if it works. Right. So I'm going to test it in Zap, and then if it works, we'll do it in Insomnia. So we will open resend with the request editor, change the method. You can either do this manually, you can either change this to put manually, or use the method dropdown, which will make that replacement for you. Now, put requests have bodies. I'll just send an empty body to see what happens. But there's one other thing that I need to do, which Zap doesn't do for you. And by the way, PWST students, you should remember this. What else do I need to do before I fire off this request if I want it to have a chance of succeeding? Look at the headers. I need to specify the content type. It's expecting JSON, so I'm going to make sure it knows it's getting JSON. Okay, so we got a 500. We'll try with a post. Okay, so we got a 500 again. Now, switch back to a GET request. What was my user ID? ID 3. Another thing about REST APIs is that if you have IDs like this, we should also be able to do like get user 3. No, apparently not. There's just user me. ID 3. Credit 0. Well, let's see if we give it... Let's go back to the put. Options is good, but it has to be configured to actually respond to options. In this case, get head. Not everything will respond to options, although it's always a good thing to check. So again, this might be one of those situations where we need to try users. Nope, that's a 500 too. But let's fuzz this. Yeah. Let's fuzz this. Same situation. We'll use the sec lists, web content, API. We'll do objects. See how we do here. Most of these are going to be 500s, which is why we sort by response code. But it's also possible so we know we have this, which creates a user. What if we give it the credit object, or the credit value? Let's call it Bob 2. Okay, ID 4. still credit 0. Although, it's a different user ID. How many things are in this? $3,132. Okay. Let's try making a new user. With the credit. Okay, ID 5. And then let's try with the user me here. We're going to change the authorization token up to our new base 64 encoded. That did it. So if we send the credit value in our user creation, it gives us as much credit as we want. It does a naive copy of the object right from the login, which is super dangerous. That's why we got the flag there. So we will create an alert on that. And improper input handling is correct here. So again, that's going to be a high. Confidence is confirmed. And then login or user creation include credit values. Boom. Yes, I did mention PWST Ginge. That is Practical Web App Security and Testing, which is my course on how to get started with web app hacking. If you're interested in doing web app pen testing, then that is the course that you want to start with. It will walk you through good methodology for all of the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. It'll get you started using ZAP as an HTTP proxy. And it will also talk about how to provide reports on your findings, how to do that well. Okay. Do we want to do API 7? Sort of running out of time here. Oh, good. Cross-origin requests. User login. Get key. User log out. So we are expecting cross-origin requests. Let's just hope it works fine. Okay, so what might be the issue here? We create a user. User logs in. Get key. And user log out. The idea is that just cross-origin is allowed. Let's go to API 7 here. Create a user. Bob. Password 123. Okay. And then our user login. We'll set up API 7 auth. Okay, so what do we get back? We get back a cookie. We get a session. Uh-oh. Okay, so the session ID. So we sent... That's interesting. We didn't get a cookie before. This time we did. So here's the trick. We're going to get the key, right? Okay, they just gave it to us because we had a session. Or did we? We didn't send any cookies with it. So, actually, that's kind of an interesting point. If we get the key... Oh no, we did send it with the cookie. Okay, so that's the trick. Can we get it without the session cookie? What happens when we remove that? Always check to see what happens when you remove... Okay, so this user not logged in. Okay. Mad Flash asks, do you do hack the box or try hack me? Very occasionally. I'm doing it less and less. It's just, it's not as useful for where I am and what I'm trying to do. If we do a user log out, that logs out the session. Let's get key. Requires the cookie. So it's sending the cookie. So what do they want to actually demonstrate here? Like cross there, is this a cores issue? Because how did we send it? Okay, well, what happens when we log out? Okay, so when we log out, I mean, if this is a cores issue, let's talk about cores. CORS is an HTTP header-based mechanism that allows the server to indicate any origins other than its own from which a browser should permit loading resources. Now, there is no CORS header set at all. In order to check an example of cross-origin request, the front of JavaScript code served from whatever uses a fetch request or XML HTTP request to make a request to domain B. So data.json. Okay. For security reasons, browsers restrict cross-origin HTTP requests initiated from scripts. For example, XML HTTP request and the fetch API follow the same origin policy. This means that a web application using those APIs can only request resources from the same origin the application was loaded from, unless the response from other origins includes the right CORS headers. But like, plainly that's not an issue here because we're requesting it from nowhere, right? Do they want to demonstrate that I can do this with an origin that is different? Ooh, nope. That's not what I wanted. Ah, it's setting the cookie for me. URL. Still with the cookie. All right. Well, we'll do it the fun way then. I don't have HTTPX on here, do I? Oh, I do. Awesome. HTTPX is cool. It's the easier curl, in theory. Oh, it's actually a GET request. Okay, there we go. And see how we're getting a set cookie back. Now, to demonstrate that we can do from cross origin. Okay. Oh, snap. I was rated by Chris. It hasn't shown up yet. But, thanks. Oh, or I just missed it. How far back was that? Yeah, oh, I just see it. Well, Chris, thank you so much for the raid. I'm sorry, I totally missed that. I was too in the zone setting up HTTP headers. But Chris, thanks so much. Or Nova, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And thanks so much for the new follows. I Wrestle, Jonas Sink, Cypher Enigma, Zizaz Gaming. Really appreciate that. We are doing API hacking using Insomnia and Zap, so all open source tools. Evil1987 asks, the shell colors are cool. Is it fish? So, actually, no. The shell colors are because I'm using HTTPX rather than curl to do this. So you might notice that my syntax is a little bit different than what you might be used to with curl. HTTPX is a Python library. You can install it with pip or pipx or whatever. And it gives you a nicer output for your curl work. And I find it much more enjoyable to work with. So, okay, so we're demonstrating, I guess, that we have this going on. We're doing API 7. Let's do -V for verbose, make sure that we're sending everything that we expect. Yeah, we are. Okay, then let's try a different... Rather than login, let's try a different API endpoint from here. Obviously, get key, so user key. And it says not logged in, so now we're going to do... Actually, it's a good question. Does HTTPX have a special thing for cookies? It does. Okay. But yeah, I am. Because I logged in. Okay, hang on a second. Let's log in. Okay. And then... let's remove the authorization token. Because I don't think we have the authorization token in the get key, do we? We do not. Okay, so let's remove the authorization token. We wouldn't have it. That's the whole point, is that we have the session instead. There it is. That was it. So demonstrating cores. Which I found easier to do in HTTPX. How do I delete forward? Oh, you mean how do I delete the character in front? With the delete key. With my keyboard. Wow, it's true. I guess you've never seen my keyboard because the camera can't really look at it. For those of you who are interested, I use a DOS keyboard. I'm not particularly exciting. I use the DOS keyboard Prime. This fellow right here. And in fact, I might upgrade to the Pro so I get the cool knob. But this is the keyboard I use. It's great. And I think I use MX Browns. Whatever the slightly less clicky than Blues is. And then this key right here, for those of you who only use 88 key keyboards, you children, the delete key will delete the character forward. If you press the insert key, then all of a sudden your stuff will be overwritten. I am gonna go crawl into my crypt now, because I'm 1,000 years old. I can't live without these keys, by the way. I only can use keyboards now with these. Home and end will go to the beginning and ends of lines. Control home, control end will go to the beginning and ends of documents. Page up, page down, move scrolls your document a full page. I live by these. Control D, Control A. Get out of here with Control D, Control A, Control E, Control K. I don't want to have to press 2 keys. Those are good to know, but these keys are important to me. All right. So we just broke API 7, and it's coming up on 1 p.m. here. So I think we're going to call it a day. I hope that this was a good introduction to API hacking with open source tools. So we used Insomnia to load our API spec. We used Zap to do our fuzzing. And we used a little bit of command line stuff to generate payloads. We used Python to set up number lists and user lists and things like that. And then we used HTTPX to do independent testing. We could have done this in Zap too, but independent testing for specific headers and cross-origin stuff, just so that our sessions, which Zap is designed to track, wasn't getting in our way. So, thank you so much for hanging out. I know that, Raiders, you just got here, but it's been a long stream for me. So, we're going to find some other folks who are on the hack list. Who may be on right now. And give them a raid. Or, yes, check out the Docker stream if you're interested in Docker. You can also see that on YouTube. If you're interested in getting started with Docker, the last 2 videos we did are a complete course, start to finish, on getting started with Docker. All right. So I will be back on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 1700. Until next... And let's see. We'll find somebody to raid here. Every time I raid Computer, they're about to end. So we'll do X the developer. Security Live is on. Yeah, we'll do that. They raid us a lot, so. All right. Thank you so much. Until next time, friends, please be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and happy hacking. I'll see you next time.